Welcome to Healing Through Dentistry podcast,
where we redefine health, wellness, and the power of your smile.
We're your hosts,
Hannah
and Eva, twin sisters, qualified dentists and medical doctors.
This is more than a dental podcast.
It's a journey into profound connection between oral health and whole body healing.
Through personal stories, inspiring client transformations, and expert insights,
we explore how dentistry can ignite energy, relieve chronic pain, and transform lives.
Get ready to discover the extraordinary ways your smile can heal, inside and out.
Let's begin. Welcome to next episode, where we will be talking about mainly amalgam fillings, metal materials.
But first of all, let's say what it is, what influences our health in our mouth. And metals is one of it. That's one bracket. The other one is inflammation. Mainly, what is inflammation, Eva?
Well, we say root canal treatments, we say gum disease, we say inflammations around wisdom teeth. Yeah, but I would always say to all clients that it's actually everything what we will be talking about now, it creates an inflammatory response.
Yeah, the very big bracket is toothpaste with fluoride, so fluoride in general. Fourth one is dental surgeries, so we are usually often speak about cavitations, chronic inflammation of your bones, and the fifth one's clenching, grinding, snoring. That's the fifth one.
Yeah.
So there's 5 brackets.
We love to say that the oral cavity reflects your overall health, and these things we were talking about right now, they impact your health.
Yes, and today is all about amalgams. So last episode we were talking about our experience with the amalgam and why we started to question this material based on our stories. And today we'd like to continue the discussion and probably more explain technically what is amalgam and then what is the solution instead of amalgam fillings and how we can protect ourselves if we do have them, how we can protect ourselves to remove them, right? So what is amalgam?
Well, it's alloy of metals and it's mainly a mercury, so more than 50% is mercury, which brings me the memory of parents telling you, please don't break the thermometer when you had temperature and you had parents to bring you a thermometer to measure a temperature, because it's highly toxic.
That's correct, Eva. That's what we probably forgot to mention last episode when we were talking about our story, because I remember till today how our parents always, when we high temperature and they gave us the glass thermometer under the shoulder arm, they were saying, careful, just in case you break it, don't ever lick it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, why would you put something extremely poisonous in the thermometer in the first place if you know that it's so big risk for your children? But same time, why would you put that same stuff in your mouth, in your fillings?
Well, this is the history. So back then we had thermometers based on mercury. Now we have digital, amazing. Back days we had only amalgam fillings and not resin or later on composite fillings. So it was a mercury. But we found out over the years how much it can affect your health. And our personal stories were about thyroid gland. And then we met a friend who had brain fog. And he directed us to a book, Chronic Illness, from Andy Cutler. And that's why we started using safe mercury removal technique in our clinic. And we started to protect ourselves, protect our team, and protect our clients. So let's talk furthermore about mercury. What do we know about mercury?
Well, like you said, it's an alloy. Most of it is mercury, which is 50%, they say. It doesn't really matter if it's 1% more or less. It depends that it's a mercury. It's
an alloy, so there is a recipe for it.
Yeah, there's silver, there's copper, there's tin. But what is not great about the mercury, it is not great in the vapor form, which means, and that's the point why we're removing it in a safe way, is that the vapor, meaning when we remove it, when the vapor appears, that's the most toxic form of mercury.
And I will again remind the story about cemeteries and crematorium, because they started placing filters because of this vapor. So yeah, and the mercury, that it's neurotoxic, it goes to the brainstem immediately. That's why, Hannah, you were talking about last episode about your experience with the brain fog.
Yep.
Because we were removing amalgam fillings for many years without any special protocol, but also we were eating lots of tuna, which is also full of mercury. So not only the amalgam fillings are mercury source, but we have pollution, we have the big fish, which we have to be careful with as well.
That's true. That's kind of funny that you remembered. We used to eat for lunch these tins Rio Mare, which was like, tuna. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but also it's true that mercury can go directly into your brain, into your hypothalamus, where obviously there's the main regulatory system, so regulation of your heart rhythm, blood pressure, breathing, all the survival kind of modes. What I'm thinking also about, and we mentioned that last time, but I need to repeat it as well, because there was this study and incidence of suicidals in medical field, and they said then that the dentists are, in the category where there's the suicidals the most, and we were wondering why is that, right? So here we go later when we know that the mercury is actually neurotoxin. It's got an affinity to the cells in the brain, and it changes them, the function. So here we go, all the depressions, all the anxiety.
And that's why we have lots of clients coming in, and lots of specialists, lots of other therapists are referring clients to remove safely the amalgams, and they have fatigue, chronic fatigue, they have brain fog, they have lots of neural system chronic diseases, multiple sclerosis, everything sensitive to neurons, neural system, neural tissue. Yeah, so we have lots of specialists sending us these clients, and we are very much paying attention of what protocol to use to each client, because it's always very individual how we approach the client, how often we decide to remove amalgams, and we can talk about client stories a little bit later.
Yes. Yeah, when you were talking, I was just thinking about like what is important to say, that the mercury is being constantly released into your body by you using your mouth. So it's not just like when we're removing the amalgam, when the vapor actually is the most toxic. That's why the safety protocol is very recommended. But also, it doesn't mean that, if you don't remove it, that it's not poisoning you. It is actually, unfortunately, slowly poisoning your body, because even like with the hot drinks, with chewing, with clenching, there are studies. It's not like I'm just making it up. There are studies when you can even see the vapor coming from the filling.
There's a very old video on YouTube which is showing smoking tooth, and I think it was in one stage very looked for video. So yes, so it's happening. So that's why we say to the world now that if you have amalgam fillings, it's not a smart idea to just remove it anywhere, but just find a specialist who have the smart protocol. We call it smart protocol, who can remove the amalgams safely.
Yeah, and also what I was thinking when you were talking about, like neuro affinity and the brain, affection, it's not only the brain, it just goes into all the tissues. Like they did a study with monkeys, and they saw when they placed the amalgam fillings in their mouths, in their teeth, that was like after 2 months, 60% of their kidney function went down. They did study on sheep, and again on pregnant sheep. Remember that one when we were reading it, and it affected the newborn sheep babies as well. So it really just goes everywhere in the tissue. It stores it self there.
Yeah,
So
and plus
either
to the breast milk. So that's the other thing which you remind me with the pregnancy. But
exactly,
yes,
it concentrates in the breast milk as well. So that's a good point, and it goes through the placenta to the fetus as well. So that's why we always recommend the young couples, not only women, both of them, because there's always two, in order to have a baby. So it's not only on a women's side, it actually affects like a sperm as well. So the man as well. So it is very important to think before you are thinking to have a family. Ideally, remove the amalgams as soon as possible. But if you're planning a family, I would, remove the amalgams first, and then at least half a year, I would just leave the body to clear
recover.
itself. Yeah, because I always just say to recover, because unfortunately by the removal of amalgam fillings, that's not it. You actually, now the second step is to remove the residues which are stored in your kidneys and thyroid gland and in the tissues in the body. So you need to cleanse as well after.
So we recommend clients nutrition, we recommend them supplements. We will talk a little bit more about methylation, because all these heavy toxic metals, they bind and you have to release them, and it takes time. So it's not immediately after the removal. I like to say also, from client's perspective, some of the clients, so we have three groups, some of the clients, they have a huge aha moments straight after the amalgam filling removal. So they are usually people who, well, the stories we have, that usually clients who are in fitness, because they immediately notice the strength improve, the power of them improve, they lift more weight on bench, and they are very surprised.
And why is that? Sorry, why is that, Eva? Because the mercury actually binds to oxygen, which is binding into a hemoglobin. So that is leading to a reduced energy levels, right? So here we go. Once you remove it, and we saw it even on the muscle testing when we do the kinesiology test on the muscle testing, how the muscle reacts with the amalgam and without amalgam. So imagine.
I would just remind that we did a test, which I was holding an amalgam filling in a hand, and I had totally powerless quadriceps, which is the strongest muscle in your body. So that was fascinating, and that is actually what people are experiencing. Also, I will remind our other story, which is our thyroid gland. It was weakened because we had two amalgam fillings. We have both each two amalgam fillings on a position of our first molars, and they're connected with thyroid gland, and the energy flow was weakened by that, and we was very often examined on our thyroid when we were kids. So I think we had the amalgam filling for over 10 years before it was removed.
Yeah, that's correct. And it is important to say that you don't have to necessarily have, a blood test not in, the brackets. Like for us being kids, like what happened was that the pediatrician palpated and saw that we've got a bigger thyroid in her eyes. But then they took blood and they saw nothing.
The levels were okay.
The levels were okay, but of course they were okay because we were, young children. The immunity was absolutely fine. I can say, like, we used to eat quite well. We were not like a chocolate loving kids. One of the reasons is there was not many possibilities, like back in 80s in the Czech Republic, like to have sweets. But later on they were. So yeah, but anyway, we didn't really like the sweet stuff. But what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't necessarily need to show up in the blood. Like in the blood, it shows like when the level of toxicity is on a certain level and, overflow the cup of, the burners of your body, and then it shows up, and it can be much later, much later. When the blood test is okay, it doesn't mean that actually you're not being poisoned or you're not being affected. On the contrary, you are being affected. And what is important to say, Eva, with the amalgam and mercury poisoning, it is just so differently shown in each person, and that's because
that's the groups I started, because some people, they have amazing like ahas immediately. The other group is that they don't really have, but The third one is on a subtle level, which is like I was talking about thyroid gland. So they would have cramps when they have period and the cramps disappear, so.
Or autoimmune diseases.
Yes.
Crohn's, rheumatoid arthritis.
So they don't really link it towards it, but it's after the removal. So.
And the reason is that, the mercury just goes and stores in the tissues, in the various tissues. It's in the kidney, it's in the liver, it's in the thyroid gland, it's in the brain. But obviously, it just affects everyone in a different way, like depending on what he or she has. Also, it depends on their nutrition, on their physical health, on their mental health, on emotions, trauma, etc.
And I think that's powerful to say, because it's depending on nutrition, because that's, I think, something to point out, because we do also test hair for heavy toxic metals, and we receive a report which is the addition is a nutrition, because as Hannah, she said, it's very depending on nutrition, because the body is actually powerful to release the heavy toxic metal, but it has to have a right help from our body, and it's just depending what we eat. So we have, interestingly, find out that in, I think, third test, we had elevated levels of aluminium. And we were thinking, where is aluminium in our life? So we were just kind of looking the kettle, water kettle,
Or like,
and
we
then
don't use aluminium is often for just people who
aluminium is very often for the women, for the deodorants, or for men as well. But I mean, that's no longer, for years, like more than 10 years, we don't use it. So later on, read in the report that it was because we had less meat in our diet, and less meat in our diet meant that the body is not able to detoxify the heavy toxic metals. So we were looking into nutrition. I'm sure we will be, one of the episodes would be about nutrition, about our story, about a low carb, high fat diet, about vegan, when we did vegan. So I think we will connect all together, even with these amalgams together.
But I mean, what you're trying to say, Eva, and I was trying to say that the symptoms do vary. And it is very difficult to diagnose. Like you just mentioned, hair test analysis, it can be shown in urine. In hair, there's much more of, it is more obvious in the hair. But it is kind of difficult, because like when you think about it, like the common sense is that no device and no technique can actually see all the possibilities, how the heavy metal actually connects with other stuff, because they usually bind with antigens, they bind with toxins from microbes, toxin with spores, and they are and other heavy metals. And that's why there's just so many possibilities how they can influence your body in a different scenarios that no device can actually detect it. And it is very easy for other practitioners or other people to just say, okay, chronic fatigue, that's because you've got
you work hard, and you have long hours, and you have 4 kids, and so on.
So they always kind of it is easy to kind of throw the ball somewhere else, and it's someone else's mistake. But what we see from our experience in a dental practice, removing amalgams for many years, how amazing the transformation of our clients are. They have autoimmune disease and then no longer have an autoimmune disease. They have, I don't know, chronic digestion issues, and then after they no longer have chronic digestion issues, or because it is,
or they are not pregnant and then they get pregnant.
Yes, yeah. So everything you can do to kind of optimize more health or lift up something from your body what is supposed not to be there, that's obviously better for your body, because then the body can breathe and can have energy for a different stuff. What I wanted to add with the symptoms also, there are symptoms like a lot what we hear in the practice: headaches, migraines, memory losses, inability to concentrate, focus. I was just having mood swings. I was just having a client who was saying the term that she feels like she is disbalanced in her life. Another guy was saying that a young guy who's not even 14, he said, my wife thinks that I am, ADHD because I can't focus. When she talks to me, I can't concentrate. And he's got like full mouth of amalgams. He's got like 12 amalgams in his mouth. And if you're like 38 and you've had them for, I don't know, 20 years, maybe more, it does have an effect. And it does have the cumulative effect as well. That's what people forget. Like it accumulates, and
It does. It
and
does.
the years adding on, that's just like what's your body then, dealing with in a longer term.
Which reminds me to say also to add metal crowns or metal ceramic / metal crowns, because you only have you see only the edge of metal in your mouth. And it's very clear. Lots of clients from States, they have lots of crown work because we tend to do minimal invasive, so we don't do that many crowns. But past decades, I see lots of people coming who live here and who comes to see our clinic, that they have metal ceramic fillings, which is the first layer is metal, the second layer is ceramic. And
basically ceramic is fused on the metal. So in your mouth, you might think like, oh, I've got a nice white crown, but underneath is a metal. So some people are not even aware of it.
As you see, it's like over the years you see the results. So I see one client over the years, and he is super healthy triathlon athlete in 50s, and he comes in 4 years, and I don't see any signs of inflammation. And the signs of inflammation is redness, pain, bleeding. So basically, back in years, I see healthy gums, and the body is managing everything well. But 5 years on, this client comes back and he says, I'm all around the hospitals, I don't know what is happening, many examinations to be done. And he has around these crowns very inflamed, very, very inflamed gum, which is purple, bleeds. And for me, obvious that the metal needs to be removed because it's interfering with the health. And plus, according to Chinese medicine, we always relate, could be the blockage. So if you have all the molars with the crowns where it's metal, then your intestine and your lungs could be affected and weakened. So, and exactly that was this client who was dealing with unspecific chronic pain in the bowel area, and he didn't really find the solution. Yeah.
And the other thing is, what I've just heard when you were talking is that one thing is the neurotoxicity, but the other is the electric charge as well, right? So not even that it is neurotoxic, like toxic for your neurons, but also
for all the body.
The fact that it is metal, there's this electric charge as well. So it can disrupt neuro and cellular process as well on like cellular level, which is like when we started to talk about the sportsmen, they see it the most when they have the fillings removed. They suddenly become faster and stronger and more focused, and it is incredible.
Yeah, but we have lots of stories, as you said, Hannah, about the electricity, because the body and the cells, they are electrically charged, so everything is energy. And also you see with the world how we evolve in a way is that we have 3D, 4D, 5G, right? And that's electricity, which is like communicating with our systems. And also in your mouth, if you have metal implant, which is titanium, and then the crown, which is another metal, and then post, which is holding the tooth, which was broken years ago, and it's metal, that's communicating there as a battery. And the last thing I have to say, which is a retainer, orthodontic retainer, which is another metal. So we have
titanium implant, did you say?
Yes. So we have amazing stories about removing retainers, and the symptoms, the signs disappear very quickly, the rashes, or we have even pregnancy because the retainers are on urogenital meridian. So you just release this kind of energy or release the blockage, and then a few months later, a happy story. So very important to realize this communication or
so I think how to maybe summarize this heavy discussion, because it might feel for some of you heavy. I just like, even me, I'm just like feeling the heaviness of the topic, because you might just think, oh, like I've got, not one, not two, but maybe like 12 amalgam fillings still. what should I do? And maybe that's why I'm like chronically fatigued and I'm not, I don't feel myself past few years. So maybe that's like the message for you guys who you have like these mystic symptoms, and it could be chronic fatigue, it could be autoimmune disease, it could be symptoms which are resembling like multiple sclerosis. Even we've had a client, or Parkinson's disease, or like
gut issues, anything, any chronic disease actually.
Yeah, and anything to do with the nervous system as well. So nervousness, anxiety. So this is an invitation for you to maybe dig deeper and see what resources you can actually explore in order to educate yourself based on what we are saying. What is a great resource is a book from Andy Cutler. He's got a few. The main one is Amalgam Illness. It's called Amalgam Illness. But also you are very welcome to see a documentary called Root Cause, where they discuss amalgam fillings as well and others. And yeah, it is an invitation for you to think about, okay, it might be something in my mouth which can actually influence my whole body.
And to consider to find a specialist who remove the amalgam safely. So don't just go to any dentist, because it's actually more harmful for you to have it removed without all the protections, which is the oxygen, the cover, all the protocol, all the powerful suction.
Yes, and I think because we've been talking about this for some time, I'll probably let our listeners to absorb this, and I'm suggesting that we're just gonna be talking about how to remove the amalgam, what's the safe way of how to remove it, and what nutrition I can actually eat in order for the heavy metals to remove from our body, and supplementation. I'll probably keep for the next episode.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do the next episode about what to do after the removal and how to prepare and what does it mean actually. So thanks for listening, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you for joining us on Healing Through Dentistry podcast. We hope today's conversation has inspired you to see your smile as the gateway to whole body well-being.
To stay connected, visit us on our website or follow us on social media.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could benefit.
Until next time, remember, healing starts with a smile.
Take care,
and we will see you in the next episode.